Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this week's edition of Inside the Zone. It's already week 6.
Moving right along, aren't we?
We are. Week 5 did a lot in terms of sorting out I don't want to say contenders from pretenders because the teams that lost, not necessarily pretenders, but it kind of let the cream rise to the top when you're talking about conference standings. And that is especially true in the SAC, where we have a clear-cut leader now with Homestead, back-to-back wins over Bishop, Dwenger, and Snider. And they did it relatively convincingly against the Snider Panthers on Friday night. What's your takeaway from that game?
Well, when you only have one drive that doesn't result in a touchdown, and that drive is to seal the deal with the clock running out, I think you couldn't get more impressive with that offense than what they did. 7 possessions, 7 touchdowns. That 8th one killed the clock. They did what they wanted against that Snider defense. They were 8 of 13 on 3rd down. They were 4 of 4 on 4th down. They could run it. They could pass it short. They could pass it long. It was a systematic dismantling of a Snider defense, the likes of which we hadn't seen at least since last year against that with Carroll, which was a blowout too. But we're not used to Snider really getting manhandled the way they did on Friday night.
And what do you do if you're Snider? How do you regroup from that? Because I can't remember the last time. I guess that Carroll game they gave up 41, but I can't remember the last time a team not named like Carroll or somebody from Indianapolis had that kind of offensive output against a Snider defense.
Yeah, sure. I think if you're Snider, if you're Coach Tippmann, yeah, you're still kind of in the SAC race. Although you need a lot of help. You need 2 losses for Homestead, which I don't know if that's going to happen. So I think the final 4 games, if you're Snider, everything goes into preparing for a rematch with Homestead. Whenever you get it in sectional, whether you draw each other, whether it's in week 2, don't want to look past like teams like Carroll, but I'm saying Snider, if they prepare for Homestead, they will be good enough then to beat Carroll in the postseason. I think all your energy over the next month goes into that, preparing for that rematch against the Spartans.
If you're Homestead, how do you not take your foot off the gas? Because you take a look at the next 4 games starting this week. You've got Northside, Carroll, Wayne, and Southside. The majority of that schedule is going to finish below 500 in the SAC. How do you keep things focused? Because one of the goals this season, they thought they had the firepower to win their first ever SAC title, and they certainly haven't been proven wrong all the way through week 5.
I think it's you approach it with Chad Zolman as still 1 week at a time. You have to take care of Northside this week. You need to take care of your rival in week 7, which is really the only game when you look at on paper and say this is the only game they should have problems with, or that could potentially be a game after halftime, that Carroll game, right? So I think Chad Zolman approaches it 1 week at a time, but at large, he's looking to button up the little things, get a little bit better defensively. They had some big plays given up against Snider last Friday. Shore up those things, get right, get better, get healthy over the next month, because Snider wants another shot at you.
Do you see this week maybe as a trap game, though? Because Northside, with Deuce Taylor now at the quarterback position, and granted, the teams that they've beaten recently aren't going to finish in the top half of the SAC, but Redskins have been an improving team. They had a tough early schedule without apparently their quarterback.
Yeah.
And now, you got to think Homestead's looking forward to next week when they face Carroll as, the cherry on top of a SAC championship Sunday. How do you make sure that, you don't overlook Northside this week?
Well, we don't know if Deuce Taylor will play or not. Left the game on Friday with an injury in the first half, didn't return. So he's kind of questionable, but that team is completely different with Deuce Taylor at quarterback. And you've seen it over the last couple of games. You mentioned it, quality of opponent really hasn't been exceptional, but they're not as bad as what they were the first 3 weeks of the season, for sure, when they got shut out 3 straight weeks without Deuce Taylor. So we'll see if he's back on Friday for North. That's a huge key for them to be really competitive in this game. I just don't know if Northside can match Homestead offensively. They could put up points. I just don't think they can match Homestead score for score if Homestead is playing to their potential. Like you mentioned, could be a trap game.
And then for Bishop Dwenger, you've only got 1 loss in the SAC right now. You're still in it, albeit the way the SAC does it, the tiebreakers are, head-to-head. So really, they've got to have Homestead lose 2 games. Maybe it's Carroll, but like Snider, they need a lot of help if you're going to win an SAC championship. But they're playing pretty good football. I saw them out there against Carroll last week, and a defensive slugfest. Dwenger can do it offensively, can do it defensively, but I know they need to be putting up more points if they want, the outcomes they want, especially when it comes to 5A playoff time.
Well, everybody's effectively 2 games behind Homestead, right? Because the only team with 1 loss has a loss, or the 2 teams that have losses, to Homestead, both lost to them. They only have one loss, right?
Right.
So Bishop Dwenger, Carroll, easy for me to say. Bishop Dwenger and Snider. Carroll has 2 losses. They have a chance next week in week 7 to knock off their rival, but they would still be a game behind.
Yeah, they have to
Homestead.
shake things up and hope for like a 3-way.
Yeah,
or something like that.
absolutely. So luckily for us, the SAC actually breaks ties as opposed to every other conference in the area.
I do like it.
So when they can, they do. So 2-way, they break it with head-to-head. 3-way, they kind of look at it to see if they can. More often than not, they can't. But for Bishop Dwenger, I think they came out really, really effectively early in the season with their passing game, and they've kind of hit a little bit of a lull with that last couple weeks. I'd really like to see that refined because as that passing game grew last year, they became more of a balanced offensive attack. It was still run dominant throughout the playoffs, but they could make some plays when they needed to in the vertical pass game. That's something they need to straighten out when they get ready. I feel for either Valpo maybe in semi-state, but man, we're thinking New Pal and Dwenger in 5A championship game. That'd be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun down
Yeah.
at Lucas Oil Stadium. Speaking of a lot of fun, the folks at East Noble are having a lot of
They
fun because they appear to be on their way, or at least on the right path, to a Northeast State title. Are you surprised? Not necessarily that East Noble won, because I think people had them as a slight favorite over Leo, especially with the game in Kendallville last week, but just the sheer numbers of a 35-7 win against a Leo team that A, had run the ball seemingly with ease so far this season, and B, had been really good defensively leading up to this game.
It just further proof that East Noble's on another level than everybody else in the Northeast State. It's one of those years where, man, we wish we had a non-conference week or two in the SAC and we could play a Dwenger versus East Noble or an East Noble versus Snider, because I really think some of those games against the top-tier SAC teams would be very good games. I think the SAC kind of some of their fans put themselves on a pedestal, but I think you could throw East Noble into the SAC this year, and they would battle with the top teams in that conference. It's a very competitive year in the NE8, in my opinion. It's just 2 through 7, not 1 and not 8. I mean, East Noble's at the top, Belmont's in the bottom, and everybody else is kind of jumbled, playing some really good football, really good games. Unfortunately, East Noble's untouchable.
Yeah, DeKalb and Columbia City played another good game. It was Columbia City's first loss of the season, but a 2017 game, DeKalb beats them at Columbia City, and that again knocks Columbia City down a peg when you take a look at the standings in the Northeast State. But if you're East Noble, again, how do you keep the foot on the gas? Because it seems like they have all the components of a championship team. You're talking about a good quarterback play. Defense obviously played well to hold Leo to 7 points. And then you're talking about they've got Ernstberger at the receiver position. They've got Jones at the receiver position. You can't focus on one of those guys. They can run the football as well. I mean, they have a little bit of everything, and that, I imagine, makes them tough to prepare for on a Friday night.
Every single week, East Noble needs to get a little bit better each week because we know the 4A playoffs is a grind locally. Yeah, Bishop Dwenger's not in that field anymore, but you have 2 very competitive sectionals in 4A in Northeast Indiana. So if you're Luke Amstutz, you're saying we need to be better in week 6 than we were week 5, 7-6, 8-7, continue to get better. You may not be challenged on the scoreboard much in the final 4 weeks of the season. You hope you are if you're Luke Amstutz, but you really were favored early in the first half of the year. First 5 games was really tough for East Noble. So you need to continue to get better because you don't want to have to flip that switch in week 10. Because the 4A playoffs are really difficult around here.
For East Noble, they've got at Norwell, at Columbia City, then at home against Belmont, or at home against New Haven, and then at home against Belmont. That's the rest of their schedule. Which of those games concern you the most? At Norwell, I would guess, or at Columbia City? Those are probably their 2 biggest hurdles left to clear.
When you look at Norwell and how they played Leo in that 3-2 game,
they got a real defense, man.
Yeah, they can make some plays and maybe rattle Bailey Parker a little bit. But I think going Columbia City is the biggest challenge on that schedule. Despite the loss last week for the Eagles at home to DeKalb, it's a very dynamic offense that Columbia City has. If you're not ready, they can really make you pay, particularly with the moderate to deep ball from Greg Bolt. So I think if you're East Noble, you can't start coasting because you can get nipped either this week or next week. And even a Huntington North or a New Haven team that got their first win, they're much better than their record indicates. That's a game that you can't afford to come out flat in.
Okay, so we've got a front runner in the Northeast State. We've got a front runner in the SAC. The front runner of the ACAC will be decided this coming Friday night. It's a game I think we've all kind of looked forward to since week 1, and then South Adams just keep piling up the points. Adams Central has not let off from where they've been the last couple of seasons. It's our Highlight Zone game of the week Friday. South Adams at Adams Central. How do you approach this game? What are some of the big keys you think Friday night down in Monroe?
Well, can Adams Central slow down South Adams offensively? I mean, it's just a team that continues to put up points and points and points. And they were challenged a little bit on the road last week at Monroe Central, a good kind of prep game for Adams Central coming up on Friday. I look at South Adams, and it looks very reminiscent of the Adams Central teams we had the last 2 years, where they were head and shoulders above everybody else in the ACAC. And we kind of hyped up the South Adams game last year, the year before, and South Adams just wasn't at that level. I think Adams Central is good. Don't get me wrong. They're very good. I just think South Adams is a little bit better. And I hope for a good game on Friday, but wouldn't be surprised if South Adams wins this going away, similar to how Adams Central's won the last couple matchups in the series.
When you take a look at just the score compare, the one game I would compare in this series would be the Monroe Central game.
Yeah.
You know, South Adams didn't really have a problem scoring the football. I mean, they were held to 34 points, which doesn't seem like a lot
Right.
From what we've seen South Adams the past couple of weeks when they went down at Monroe Central and beat a top 10 team in 1A
Right.
at their place by 19 points.
Yeah.
And Adams Central, it was a little bit closer. Adams Central hosted Monroe Central, Monroe Central in week 3, beat them 21-13. So if you score compare, there's a pretty decent gap where it says South Adams has handled Monroe Central a little bit better, especially considering that win came on the road.
I think if we see South Adams come out and win like they did last week in a dominant fashion, Monroe Central hung around for a little bit, but it was South Adams' game to win from the opening kick. If they can come out and dominate the Flying Jets, I really think we need to start to seriously consider this team as a 1A state title contender, or at the very least to get down there. We see Lutheran there at number 1, and they don't play an incredibly challenging schedule, but I don't think you could say South Adams plays Murderers Row either. But with how dominant both sides of the ball have been for South Adams, their special teams have been solid. If we're looking for a team, we talk so much about Dwenger in 5A, could East Noble make a run, Snider always, Homestead in 6A. I think maybe our best bet could be the South Adams Starfires.
I think that's saying a lot because I totally agree with you. Just you look across the state, as long as Lutheran doesn't lose, they're going to be number 1.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to overtake somebody if they don't lose when it comes to that number 1 spot. But South Adams really has all the components to make a deep run in the postseason.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about their offense, but their defense. Nick Miller set the career record for sacks. He's only a junior.
Yeah.
He's like 6'4", a tight end. He can play some Division I football maybe. I mean, he's a player. And he's making plays defensively. Aiden Warner's making plays defensively. I mean, they've got it.
Yeah.
They've got kind of the total package when you talk about 1A football.
And they can beat you in a variety of different ways. We're not talking about a team where we go, man, if you slow that running game down, they really cannot move the ball. I mean, South Adams' offense is dynamic as they come in 1A football. They can spread you out, go 4 wide, then go 5 wide if they need to. They can pound it down your throat with the running game. It's a very versatile offense that you don't see very often at the 1A level going spread. I think it can give a lot of teams trouble for the rest of this year into the postseason. They just need to stay healthy.
And when you take a look at the NECC, this week could go a long way in determining and kind of separating the big division and the small division standings. Right now, West Noble is atop of the big division standings. They are at Garrett this week, and Garrett comes in 1-0 in the conference, capable of upsetting teams, especially where the game is played. But how do you see West Noble Garrett playing out?
Difficult, I think, for Garrett. They had a win a couple weeks ago on the road at Lakeland. It was an underrated win, I think, but it's tough to go into West Noble and get a victory with the way they're playing right now. Brandon Pruitt's really hitting his stride. Josh Gross, Kyle Mayhorter is doing a very good job at quarterback. It's a team that really I don't see anybody at their level in that division, provided they come out ready to play.
Yeah, Fairfield had a 3-1 record overall, although the competition level might not have been there. But, Matt Thacker had to kind of build that program up. Last year didn't win a game, had to forfeit a game because they didn't have enough healthy bodies in 3-1. But, they got handed a pretty resounding defeat against West Noble. I don't know that anybody's got the firepower to compete with West Noble when it comes to the big division or anybody in the NECC for that matter.
No, totally. I definitely agree. It was in Angola's dominance the last couple of years. It's kind of flipped a little bit in West Noble's year this year.
In the small division, you've got Eastside at Prairie Heights and Fremont at Busco. Those are games that'll help decide the conference championship. But East Coast got a leg up on everybody when they, beat Busco not only at Busco, but in the fashion in which they did, can anybody catch Eastside in your opinion going forward?
No, I don't think so. I mean, credit to Fremont with getting some wins.
Yeah, their
You know, it's
record looks
exciting,
pretty
right?
good.
What are they 3-2? I think
They are
something like that?
3-2 and 1-0 in conference.
How about that? So they got a challenge playing Busco this week, but yeah, Eastside going to Cherubusco and dominating the Eagles. That was effectively that little school championship game. It's unfortunate it happened in week 4, but that was to me the championship game for that division. And unless East Noble comes out and lays a colossal egg, I don't think anybody can challenge them.
What are you most looking forward to about week 6? I almost said week 5.
We
week 6.
are moving right along, aren't we? I think, man, it's tough because with the last couple of weeks we've had those marquee games to look at. But I think it's how good is South Adams. I think that is the key here. It's a tough place to go to play in Monroe. It's only a stone's throw from Bern. It's going to be it's a great rivalry game. It's going to come down to which team can execute. I feel just talent-wise, South Adams is above Adams Central. But Adams Central surprised up to this point being 5-0. I don't think we expected that. So can they continue the surprise season coming up on Friday?
All right, we'll have it covered on the Highlight Zone this coming Friday night. And just